Welcome back everyone. In this lesson we are going to be setting up our project. First of all, let's set up our actual project folder structure. So down here in our project window, what we want to do is create a new folder, and this folder here is going to be called our sprites. And this of course is going to hold all of the sprites for our game. Now we can also create another folder, and this folder is going to be called tile map, because for the background of the map we're going to be using Unity's tile map tools to do that. And what else we need is one more folder called resources, and resources is where we're going to be storing all of our prefabs that we want to spawn in. And the reason why we don't not resources, and the reason why we don't put this in a prefabs folder is because resources is a folder that Unity can actually identify and access. And the reason why we need that is because Photon, to instantiate an object, you don't actually instantiate it by prefab, you instantiate it by a prefab path in the resources folder. So everything that you want to instantiate over the network, you need to put in the resources folder. So that's what we're doing there. Okay, now let's go inside of our sprites window here, in our sprites folder, and what we need to do is import a few of our sprites. The first one is going to be our cursor selector. This is going to be what appears on the grid to show you which tile you're selecting. We also need our soldiers. This is going to be one of our units. And then we also need our tanks. This is going to be our other unit. We also then need our tile, which is going to be the grass tile that we're going to be using. You can choose to use whatever tiles you want. And finally, we need a white square, and this is going to be for the health bar. Now, with these 5 assets here, these are actually using free artwork by Kenny, who actually has a wide range of free art assets on his website. There will be a link down in the lesson summary to that. Okay, so first of all, what we need to do is actually convert these sprites into something we can use, because right now they are actually set as not materials, but actually as normal textures, but we want to convert these to sprites. So let's select all of these here, and up here in texture type, we want to change this from default to sprite 2D and UI. Now you can click on the apply button, and you should see they now fit to their proper aspect ratios. Okay, but there is a few things we also need to do, and that is changing the pixel ratio. For the tile grass one here, what we need to do is change the pixels per unit here to 64, and that is because there are 64 pixels horizontally and vertically here. And what we want to do is we want to make it pretty simple. We want to make it so that this tile here is 1 by 1 units large. Just makes it much easier to work with. So we'll click apply, and we actually want to do the same thing for the soldier and the tank. So we'll select all those, change their pixels per unit to 64, hit apply as well. And for our cursor selector, what we want to do is also do this for 64 as well, because as you can see down here, this is also a 64 by 64 image. So we'll do that too. Hit apply. And that should pretty much be it. Now what we can do is actually go create our scenes. So in our scenes folder here, it should be already pre-built by Unity. We can delete the sample scene here and create a new scene, and we'll call this one menu. And then we can also create another scene, and this one we'll call game. Now let's open up the game scene. Don't save the sample scene. And inside of here, what we want to do is create our tile map. So to create a tile map inside of Unity, which is basically just a bunch of tiles that Unity meshes together into one large sprite. Actually, first of all, what we want to do is change our main camera and put it into more of a 2D mode, because right now this camera is set for 3D. So what we can do is select the camera and change the projection here from perspective over to orthographic. And what this basically is a difference between capturing depth, which is perspective, which is what you'd use for 3D. Objects that are further away become smaller. Whereas we want orthographic, which means that no matter the distance away the object is, it maintains the same size. With that, then we can also change the clear flags from skybox to solid color, and this makes it so that the background is a solid color. We'll be getting to this a bit more in detail later on when we actually get our tile set up. But for now, we'll just leave it for this blue here, and everything should be alright. So, to create our tiles, what we want to do is right-click on the hierarchy, go 2D Object, Tile Map. If we go to the scene view now, you'll see if we click on this 2D icon up here, this will take us into 2D mode. We should see that if we click our grid, we now have a bunch of little squares that we can draw into. But in order to draw in these squares, we need to open up the tile palette window. So let's go to window, let's then go down to 2D tile palette. And this will open up this window here, which allows us to create a new palette. And let's actually do that now. So click on create new palette, and we'll call this one here turn-based background. Let's click create. It'll ask us to save it somewhere, and we want to save this inside of our tile map folder here. Select that folder, and it'll create it. Now, in order to actually add tiles, let's go to our sprites folder and drag in the tile grass 1. It'll ask us to create that as an asset. We'll go back to our tile map folder and just click save. And there we go. We now have this tile that we can draw with. So if we go into the scene view here, we can begin to actually draw. If you have this brush here selected, this is the brush tool, we can then start painting. But you might notice that this is fairly large, and we actually want to reduce the size of this of the map, just so it's a lot smaller. You can choose, of course, to make it larger. We're going to make it a bit smaller now, so it's a lot more concise, and we can get into battle quicker. So I'm going to click on the main camera and change the size from 5 down to 4. The orthographic size is basically how many units are from the center of the camera to the top and bottom of the frame. So you can see there are now 4 tiles from the top to bottom, so it's 8 in total in the height. And what we want to do is select our grid again, and let's just fill this in with the green tiles. There we go, it's finished. I had to put the tiles out here a bit more since they did kind of cut over the edge of the camera. And also with this game, we are going to be making it for a 16:9 aspect ratio. You can of course choose to make it whatever aspect ratio you want, but 16:9, that's good for 1080p screens. Pretty much any sort of monitor will be able to run this in 16:9. And yeah, so if we go on the game view now, we can see that our scene is filled with these green tiles, and we're ready then to start making our game. Apart from this though, what we need to do is we can close this tile palette window off now, and what we want to do is actually go to our menu scene, and we're just going to set that up for 2D as well. So we'll save the game scene, go to the menu scene, and if you look in the game view, you can see that once again this camera is still built for 3D mode. So let's change that from perspective to orthographic, skybox to solid color, and let's actually change this background color to something. We'll change it to like a green to show that it's sort of part of this military sort of themed turn-based game. And speaking of backgrounds, let's actually go back to our game scene, and you might notice that there is no grid, because in this sort of game that's grid-based, you might want a grid here that actually divides the tiles up so you can see exactly how many tiles away you are from something. And to do that, what we're going to do is click on, not our grid here, let's go to our sprites, and what we can do is actually change this pixels per unit here from 64 over to something that, for example, 65. Click apply, and it makes the sprite slightly smaller to show that it's visible like that. Let's exchange it from 65 to 66. Oh, 66. Just so the lines are a bit more bold like that. There we go. And what we can do now is actually change the main camera background from blue to whatever color you want the lines to be. You can have them black or white, but for us, I think we're going to go for a dark green, so it still sort of blends in with the environment, but it's still easy to tell where those lines are. Yeah, something like that, I reckon. Something else we need to do is also add in some sorting layers, because since we're working with 2D sprites, we need to tell Unity which sprites should be rendered over specific other sprites. Now, to do that, let's go up to the layers button up here and click edit layers. Now in here we can open up the sorting layers window here, and we can start adding in some sorting layers. So we can click on the plus here, and we're going to enter in UI, we're going to add another one, we're going to add in background, then we're going to add in unit, and let's rearrange these now so they are actually in the correct order. So we'll have UI right at the front, and then we'll have background at the back and unit here. Okay. So with that done, we can now actually set our grid to have the background sprite, have the background sorting layer. So we can click on the tile map here, and then we can go where it says sorting layer, and we'll change that to background. Okay, so that's pretty much it for setting up our project. We've imported all the sprites we need. We've got our menu scene and our game scene set up and ready to go to start creating our turn-based game. So yeah, I'll see you all in the next lesson where we start to create our network manager.